Let us start our new chapter on of solid mechanics, that is torsion. Uh, we know what is torsion from our preliminary strength of material syllabus. Still, I'm discussing a few lines of it. The torsion of circular shafts has been discussed earlier. Here we are able to obtain a solution of the problem under the assumption that the cross-section of the bar under torsion remains plane and rotate without any distortion within twist. So if any bar has a round or square or rectangular cross-section, it remains before torsion and after torsion plane and rotate without any distortion. Means during twist it rotates within the elastic limit, and if the load is removed, it goes back to the original shape. But within the meantime, the surface what we are doing here, uh, what we are doing here, first, what we have again derivated created that torsional equation itself. Next, we are thinking that we have, instead of only one sheet forms this torsion, a bunch of sheet rotated by the same amount is being stacked together to make make the form of a solid, or in the form of a solid shaft, or in the form of a rotary shaft even. Thus, what is doing here? These stack tubes have something is common because their diameter is varied, but length is same. The torque exerted over the all of them is same. Tau created over the all of them is same, and length total of all these tubes are equal to the same. But their aesthetic radius is different, and thus polar moment of inertia is different, and they have equal share. They have different share of the torsional force which is acting over them, because it uh, depends on the radius of each of them itself. So what we are saying, that each tube has the same rotation g theta, same rotation theta star, or if you multiply it g theta, g is same for all of them. So theta g theta star is the same for all of them. And if you divide g theta by L, because L is the length of each of them, that is also same for all of them. So if it is same for all of them, the ratio tau by R is also same for all of them. In other words, tau varies linearly with R itself. But if the T1 is the torque on the first and polar inertia IP1, T2 is the torque on the second polar inertia IT2, then we can write down this equation like this: T1 by IP1 is equal to T2 by IP2 is equal to T2 by IP3, which is equal to Tn by IPM. All are equal to T1 plus T2 plus T3 is equal to plus Tn, and IP1 plus IP2 is IPM. All are equal to total torque T divided by total polar momentum inertia, means total momentum inertia of the outermost surface, where T is the total torque and IP is the second polar momentum inertia of the full shaft, or what we say full solid shaft itself. Now, with this analysis, we observe that for circular shafts, the cross-sectional remains plain before and after, and there is no distortion of the shaft itself. Uh, there is no distortion of the shaft itself. Same thing, just at the beginning we have told, the cross-section is perfectly flat, and there is no distortion of the section itself. But a non-circular is true for non-circular section. But this is true for a circular section, all right, circular or square section. But this is no longer valid for a non-circular section. It is not valid for any other section like square or rectangular or any regular shape. In this case of circular shaft, shear stresses are perpendicular to a radial line and vary linearly with the radius itself, are perpendicular to a radial line. Say, if you imagine a line from the center of the shaft to the circumference of the cross section, and you will find that the shear stress is perpendicular to this line, and it will vary linearly along with the radius and become zero at the center itself. But both these cannot be valued for a non-circular shaft. For the shear stress, if the shear stress if the shear is always perpendicular to the radius, it would have a component perpendicular to the boundary itself. When it is obviously inadmissible, since the surface of the shaft is unloaded and a shear stress cannot cross an unloaded boundary. Hence, the boundary, the shear stress must be tangential to the surface. And that by the same argument, the shear stress at the corner of the rectangular section must be zero, since the shear stress on both the vertical surfaces are zero. So both boundaries are unloaded boundaries. So here comes a conception of unloaded boundary, or 7.2. Here comes a conception of unloaded boundary. Here was shown in the figure. What we are showing here, for a circular shaft, all these things are varied, and no, it is no problem to uh, assume so. Second. Now, so we can safely say the shear stresses are perpendicular to a radial line. What is our conception initially was cross section is perfectly flat. There is no distortion or irregularity or variation over the surface of a circulation itself. But we are doing all these assumptions by taking that shear stress, that taking into consideration of a circular shaft, circular or a sheet forming a circle, forming a circular pipe shaped items or circular or a cylinder itself. But if for any other non-circular section, this theory cannot be valid. Why not? What is happening here in case of circular shaft? Shear stresses are always perpendicular to radial line and vary radially with radius. No problem with understanding it. We know if we draw a line from the center of the shaft to the periphery or circumference, and we'll understand that all the shear forces are perpendicular to these lines in all infinite number of lines, initiating from the center to reaching the outermost periphery itself. And every line should have a normal, which is the shear stress at that particular point. And over the total surface, peripheral surface, shear stress is same for all the points. But if the radius is reducing, it does not reaches the circumference, but finishes somewhere in between the center and the circumference. The shear stress also varies accordingly, and according to radius r, the shear stress is also vary. But at the radius say 0, when they're at the center of the tube, there is no shear stress like this. This is the conception for a circular cross section itself. But for any other cross section other than circular shaft, this is not valid. Say, here what we are showing here, this is a here the shear stress must be tangential to the boundary itself. All the shear stresses, if you think of it, this straight line here, this arrow here, this is shear stress, it's a vector, it is always tangential to any point in the boundary itself. Any point if there exists shear stress, it is always tangential to the boundary itself. And this tangential and this is all these shear stresses are perpendicular to the radius OB. This is the radius O and O. All this is O and this is B. This is the radius OB, and all the shear stresses are perpendicular to the radius OB. Now, it should have a component perpendicular to the boundary itself. If it is perpendicular to the radius OB, the shear stress, it should have one body. It should have a component perpendicular to the boundary itself like this. And this is obviously inadmissible since the surface of the shaft is unloaded and the shear stress cannot cross an unloaded boundary itself. There is no loading in the surface itself, but we are supposed to have a perpendicular component of force like this, which acts over the surface of the boundary. But this is not admissible because the surface of the shaft is unloaded and shear force cannot cross an unloaded boundary itself. There is no force in the surface that is unloaded. So there is no force, then there is no shear stress itself. Hence, the shear stress must be tangential in the boundary itself. So there should not be any component going to the component normal to the shear stress itself. There should not be any component perpendicular to the boundary. The shear stress always acts in any sort of shear strain, any sort of frame, which is normal with tangential to the boundary itself. There should have any normal component here. Now, further, at the boundary, well, further the same argument, shear stress at the corner of a triangular section must be 0, since shear stress of both the vertical stresses are 0 itself. So both boundaries have unloaded boundaries. If hold this surface here, it should not be any loaded here. Here, for any corner here, from the central eastern, there should be a, for a other non-circular shaft, say square or rectangular shaft itself, shear stress is also at the corner of rectangular section, say this corner. It is also must be zero since the shear stress on both the vertical faces are zero. There on the vertical faces, there is no shear stress, they are balancing each other. So both the boundaries are unloaded boundaries. The boundaries here and here, these are all unloaded. There is no shear force here because if you join O to B at the corner section, you cannot draw any tangent here. That is a corner. Here you cannot draw any tangent on this corner because this tangent cannot be normal to both of them itself. And so for a general case, in order to solve the torsional problem, what we are supposed to do, we have to adopt strength enhanced semi-inverse method. According to this method, strength enhanced semi-inverted method itself. According to this method, the strength argument, this is the most important time, the argument, the shear stress at the corner of the rectangular section must be zero. There is, since the shear stress on both the vertical faces are zero, and both the boundaries are unloaded boundaries. Shear stress on both the vertical faces of the this here and this here, those the vertical faces are zero, so both the boundaries are unloaded boundaries. Now, according to this belt rotation inverse method, the displacement Ux, Uy, and Uz are assumed. These strengths are then determined from the strength displacement relation, and using Hooke's law, the stresses are then determined itself. Applying the equation of the equilibrium at the appropriate boundary condition, and we want to try to identify the problem of which assumed displacement, assumed stresses are solutions. So we should find out the displacement, the strain. We know we'll find out the strain displacement relation. We can find out the strain. From Hooke's law, we'll get the strains. Then apply equilibrium and appropriate boundary condition. We will clear all the constant of integration is there. So this is the most important part here. The shear stress at the corner of a rectangular section. This corner, this is the constant B. Shear stress is supposed to be zero because on both these vertical faces are supposed to be zero. Where both the boundaries are unloaded. Here, shear stress here in this space as well as in this space, both are zero. So their resultant should supposed to be equal to zero here. There is no shear stress. There is no shear stress because in the boundary there are supposed to be no other shear forces extra. And over which we can apply this Saint-Venant's theory, which according to this method, displacement Ux, Ey, and Ez are assumed from the strains are then determined from stress displacement relation, and using the Hooke's law, then displacement relation is, I'm just telling you one. Then displacements are like this. Uxx is equal to dux by dx, duyy, duy by dy, and duz, dj, extra jz is duz by zz. Same is the case with gamma xy, gamma yz, gamma zx, and the total strain of the line PQ will give next epsilon x nx square, epsilon yy and y square, epsilon zz and yz square plus epsilon nx epsilon xy and yx and y, epsilon yz and y and z, epsilon zx and x and j. This is where nx and y and z are respectively the coordination cosines of the of x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis. Now, Let us now consider the torsion of the prismatic bar of any cross-section twisted by couples at the end. It is assumed that the shaft does not contain any hole parallel to the axis itself. So on the surface of the shaft, there is no other hole or any other disturbance or any other deformation is there. So on the basis of the above, any torsion of the prismatic bar of any cross section twisted by the couples at the end. Now it is assumed that the shaft does not contain any holes parallel to the axis itself. Multiple connected solutions will be found, discussed accordingly. So on the basis of the solution of circular shafts, just 1 second. Now, on the basis of the solution of the circular shafts, we assume that cross section rotate about an axis itself. Cross section may be round, may not be round, but it is always a cross section have an axis. So we can think of they are rotating about an axis itself. Now the twist per unit length becomes theta itself. So a section at a distance z from the fixed end will therefore rotate through theta into z. So as what we are saying, that cross section should have all these type of circular shaft or semicircular shaft or square shaft, whatever it may be, it should have a section, should have an axis, and the twist per unit length will be theta. And so if a section at a distance say z from the fixed end will therefore rotate to theta into z. This length is from the twist per unit length is the length of the shaft from the fixed end itself. It can be equal to, so if we have the length per unit length of theta, then if the length, the distance from the z will be theta into z. And then a point P, a point P here on the P, whose coordinates is x into y, where this is the x axis, is y axis, the point coordinate of P is x, y. Means this distance is equal to x and this distance is equal to y itself. Now, up the point in this section will now undergo a displacement arc theta. If this consider this point, will have the displacement arc theta z. As shown in this here, theta, the components of the displacement will be ux minus arc theta z tan beta uy arc theta z cos beta itself. So first of all, we have the displacement arc theta z itself, where r is the radius from this length here, from the center. The distance is equal to r, and we are having this z. Distance is from equal to r itself, and r multiplied by theta into z is the distance equal to p dash, which due to the deformation, the point P will undergo this assessment. So point P due to the deformation is where moved deformed to point P dash itself, and the degree of deformation is equal to r theta into z, where r theta into z is the deformation from the end, and multiplied by the r is the radius over the surface itself. If we divide here, it will be equal to r into theta. This line is creating an angle beta from the x-axis itself. So ux is equal to minus r theta sine beta. Ux is the movement of point x from here. This is actually the movement of point x. So r theta z into sine beta is the movement itself. And uy, the vertical side itself, this is uy and this is ux itself. Then so this is r beta z. If we consider this rectangle, I mean this vertical triangle, P dash and this one here, and where r theta is length of P dash. So ux is equal to r theta multiplied, and where beta from here, and this is the angle beta, then ux or equal this distance is equal to r theta z multiplied by sine beta, and uy is equal to vertical distance r theta z. R theta is equal to cos beta itself. This is given as minus because it is moving in the opposite direction. Now it is very clear from this value what is sine beta, y by r, where r is this length and y is the surface itself, distance over the surface, and cos beta x by r. Y is this coordinate from P to here. So this surface is equal to y, and that sine beta is equal to y by r, and cos beta is equal to x by r, where x is the x coordinate of the point P itself, and r is the distance of this point P from the center of rotation itself. In addition to the x and y displacement, the point P, x and y displacements, the point P may undergo a displacement in z direction, which is called wrapping. Which z direction is the direction along the longitudinal axis of our tube itself. Now, if we assume that this z is a function of only x and y and independent of z, and this means that wrapping is the same for all normal cross sections. Substituting sin beta and cos beta, center compression given as ux minus theta y z, uy theta j plus theta y x z, and uy and uz itself equal to theta phi xy. So what we are having, this is the important point. To the other than this x and y displacement, we have it here. We have a distance uz. The habit distance is a function only. We have the z displacement. This is called wrapping. We assume, this is our assumption only, that the z displacement is a function of only x and y. Means the position of the initial point. What is x and y? The initial coordinate of the point before the distribution is that, and z is also a function of this coordinate itself. Now, after the deformation, the wrapping is same for all normal cross sections. Means in wrapping, it's same for all normal cross section because it depends on the position of the points over the cross section only. Points is determined by the position x and y. So all cross sections is more or less remains. All normal cross section, the wrapping is more or less same. Now, but sine beta and cos beta, what we'll do? We divided what is sine beta, and y by r. This is y divided by r itself, and it is given by the z itself. Ux, according to Saint Farnham's replacement components are given like this. They are replacing sine beta by z and sine beta by y. What is happening here? Y is given with r sine beta, and x is given by r cos beta. So ux That displacement is given by theta into yz, theta into xz, and uz is given by theta is a function of x and y itself. So psi xy is called the wrapping function. From these three discrete components, we can calculate the associated strain component. So we are having the displacement component lies here. Displacement components are given by this formula ux minus theta yz, uy theta xz. Means ux is a form is equal to the coordinates of y and angle subtended theta multiplied by the z itself. And uy same theta is the coordinates angle intended here created inside the coordinates of the point x coordinate of the points multiplied by the z itself, where uz the vertical is theta multiplied by the function of x and y, the relation of x and y itself in terms of mathematical function. Well, for psi xy is called wrapping function. From these three components, what we have, we can calculate the associated strain components. We have from equation 18, we know just we have discussed, this is the equation 18 and this is the equation 19. And we have this ux, uy, uv, and here gamma xy or shear strain, shear rectilinear stress strain, rectilinear strain, and rectilinear jet. And along x-axis, y-axis, is z-axis. Same is the case of gamma means shear strain is acting towards y-axis and acting along x-plane, x normal, etc. So dux by dy, dux by dz. So rate of change with respect to y-axis, rate of change of y, rate of change of ey, with respect to x, and same is the case of the others. So from this, with the help of this equation, these three equations, what we do, we put gamma epsilon xx, epsilon y, epsilon z, and equal to gamma x, gamma xy. These are all equal to 0. And gamma xy is, or shear strain is theta into the derivative of psi in terms of y plus x, and derivative of theta in terms of phi by x minus y. From Hooke's law, we know what is sigma x, sigma y is a sigma z. So gamma e into delta plus e divided by 1 plus gamma into e epsilon xx. Gamma y 1 minus same thing multiplied by delta mass e by epsilon z. Same equation e for e epsilon z plus e divided by 1 plus gamma into epsilon z. So tau xy is g gamma xy, tau yz g gamma yz, and tau zx is g gamma, tau zx is g gamma yz itself, where delta is equivalent to epsilon xx, epsilon yy, and epsilon zx itself. Substituting 7.8, we'll have sigma x equal to sigma y equal to sigma z equal to tau xy equal to 0. Tau xyz is equal to g theta, tau d psi by dy plus y x itself. So tau zx is equal to g theta d psi by dy minus y itself. The above stress components are the ones corresponding to the assumed displacement components. These stress components should satisfy the equation of equilibrium given by this 1.65, which is given by like this. All given by sigma x, sigma tau xy, tau z, sigma y, tau xy, tau z, sigma z, tau xy, tau z. According to stress components, the first two equations satisfied identically, and from the third equation we have g theta d square psi by delta x square by d square psi by d delta y square equal to 0. Or d square psi by dx square, d square psi by dy square equal to delta square by psi equal to 0. Hence, the wrapping function psi is harmonic, that is, it satisfies the Laplace equation everywhere in the region R in figure 7.3. Now let us consider the boundary condition. If fx, fy, fj are the components of the stress on a plane with normal n, x, nx, ny, and z, and at a point on the surface, then from equation 9, we know the Gaussian cosine nx sigma x and y sigma tau xy and z tau zx as equal to fx. Similarly, nx tau xy and y sigma z and z fy, and nx tau xy and y tau yz plus nz x is equal to f itself. So what will happen here? What is shown in this figure, two figures here, is the irregular shape pattern, not circular, not rectangular, anything like this. We have a point here whose x and y axis is given, whose x coordinates and y coordinates and x coordinates are given here. On this surface, that is n with having ejection cosine nx along the x-axis, ny along the y-axis, and 0 along the z-axis itself. Now, that is being put here. We are saying that this is the minus del x displacement because it is going to the negative side of the x-axis. The plus sigma y going to the positive side of sigma axis, and this is here x-axis, y-axis, and n is the normal on this particular plane itself. There is no force acting on the boundary, and the normal surface is perpendicular to the z-axis itself. So we can say that z-axis is perpendicular to the piece of paper. So n is also normal to this paper. That n z is equal to 0. There is no direction cosines along the z-axis itself because cos 0 will be cos 90 will be equal to 0 itself. Using the stress component for semester from this earlier points, like here, this 7.9 will have we find that the first two equations in the boundary condition are, or first two in the boundary conditions are identifiably satisfied. The third equation gets g theta t psi delta psi by delta x minus y into nx delta theta delta y by delta x plus x into ny equal to 0 itself. And from figure 4b here, nx, which is equal to cos nx equal dy by dx, dy by ds itself, and ny dx by dy, dx by ds itself. So substituting all these things here, the value of nx and value of ny, we are putting dy by ds and dx by ds here. Therefore, each problem of torsion